In the state of Missouri in 2024, lots of critical decisions are going to need to be made. Next year, one of those decisions is who's going to be the new Missouri governor. This week on Connecting the Gap, we welcome Chris Wright, who is on the Republican ticket for Missouri State Governor in 2024. Together we talk about his platforms, his religious beliefs, and his family. We're going to get back into that right after this. In this world, there are many disconnects that cause chaos in our lives. Connecting the Gap podcast is birthed from the desire to share hope and restoration of the power of the gospel by being transparent and open in our biblical walk with God. We're going to take a few moments this week as we navigate God's Word, peer into other people's testimonies, and encourage each other to connect the gap. Welcome to Connecting the Gap podcast. I'm Daniel Moore, the host for this podcast. You can visit my website at www.connectingthegap.net for all the podcast platforms that I am on, as well as any information you would like to find out about my ministry. We're also available on YouTube, Rumble, and the podcasting app Edify. You can also stream us on your Alexa or Google smart devices such as the Echo Dot or the Google Home Hub. So please go check all of that out and just subscribe and share at any of those locations. Leave 5-star reviews or just comment on the different podcasts each week. That helps our algorithms and helps us to spread further the Word of God to the people that need to hear, and that allows you to become a part of this ministry. So thanks again for coming in and spending some time this week. This week I've got a special guest with me, and I'm pretty excited to have him here this week and talk to him about a big thing that's going on in his life at this point. I have Chris Wright with me. He is actually a Missouri governor candidate for the Republican ticket. And welcome to the podcast, Chris.
Thank you for having me. Excited.
Well, I appreciate you taking the time out of your schedule to come in. I've known you for quite some time now, and I really think that you're a perfect candidate for this job. And so I just wanted to try to do what I could to help you with what I could to try to get your message out there and the platform out there.
Well, I appreciate it, and every little bit helps, especially since I'm not a political guru, the big guy on the totem pole. I'm just your everyday blue collar worker. I mean, you look at my hands, I still have calluses on them.
Yeah. And that, when you start a process like this, not having that big name out there, there are a lot of hurdles that you have to jump and a lot of things you have to go through.
It is very daunting whenever I first started off with it, but a lot of prayer has gone into this, a lot of guidance, and at the end of the day, just being obedient and just wanting better for Missourians.
Yeah, and we know that with the state of our society and our governmental situation that we have today, the more good Bible-believing, solid Christian people that we can keep in those leadership positions, the better off our country is.
I agree. It's one of those things where there's a lot of confusion going on in this world, and whenever you go back to the basics, go back to where it all began, and that's the Bible. There's no confusion.
Yes. God is not the author of confusion. That's for sure. And I think that's one reason that you can look at our society today, look at our governmental leadership, and understand that Satan has a big hand in all of that, because there is so much confusion going on everywhere.
Yeah.
And it's almost to an extent where it almost seems like it's getting out of hand.
It's gotten out of hand. It almost doesn't seem real as much as it's gotten out of hand, but it goes back to one of the things that whenever I'm going around talking with people, it's complacency. There's so much complacency going on. There's a lot of people who we need to step up, especially as Christian men, leaders of our families. We got to do better.
Yeah, definitely. I totally agree with you there. As we get started this week, just to give you guys some information right up front, Chris does have a website. It's Chris Wright. That's WRIGHT. Chris Wright, the number 4, MOGovernor.com. So that basically says Chris Wright for Missouri Governor.com. So you can check out his website and all the platforms that he is running on there at that website. We're going to talk a little bit about that today as we get further into this podcast episode. I think what I want to start here with, Chris, as we get started today, I think it's very important that we start off with your testimony, your background. Did you grow up in Missouri? I see on the website where you grew up on a farm. Just give us a little bit of your background of where you come from, the grassroots of who you are, and let us know a little bit about Chris.
Oh man, there's going to be some people that will laugh at this, but I was actually born in Texas, and at the time, my parents were carnies, of all things. So growing up, until I started school, I had the kid's dream, all the corn dogs, cotton candy, Dr. Pepper you could imagine, and all the games. So it was fun growing up in that aspect, but I ended up moving to Missouri when I was about 4.5, getting ready to start kindergarten. Been in Missouri ever since. Actually grew up in a little community called Longview, which is right outside of Stella. Grew up, went to McDonald County, graduated from McDonald County. Kind of in and out of church as a kid. Really didn't get involved until about my sophomore, junior year. And just being honest, I had a girlfriend who was a Christian back then, and she kept getting me to youth, and ended up loving youth. And that's where I ended up giving my life to the Lord. Is at the youth venue, there was a show that they were doing. They did an altar call. Gave my life to Christ, and haven't turned around since, type of deal.
Yeah.
I just loved the fact how God just kept stirring in my heart, and finally I broke down and realized that He is the way, the truth, and the light. I mean, just plain and simple.
And for the benefit of the listeners that are out of our area, because I know people listen all over the United States and even out of the country to my podcast, the places that Chris is referencing here is basically in the southwest Missouri area here in the United States.
Very, very rural area.
Very rural.
We're talking populations of 10 or 15 where there's more chickens and cows than people. Very rural.
Yeah, it's definitely, if you grow up in places like that and you succeed, a lot of times you can say that you've actually accomplished something.
I joke about that all the time.
Yeah.
I tell people where I came from, it is a miracle that I have succeeded.
Yeah. Well, you are married now, and you have children. Tell us about that.
Married. Her name's Nicole. I've got four kids. One of them's an adult, out of the house. Very, very thankful for that, because it's one less mouth to feed, and he's a boy. So, man now, obviously. He's getting ready to turn 20. Getting ready to have an adult daughter, my first daughter, and my other two, one's getting ready to get her license. She'll be turning 16, and my last one, number 4, the baby boy, he just got his permit, and just great kids. I mean, they have their teenager moments, but
as they all do.
Whenever you take them from the beginning and instill what's right is right, wrong is wrong, it helps tremendously.
Yeah, it does. And there's several episodes that I've put out over the last couple of years on my podcast where, we've talked about the importance of raising your kids in church, keeping them biblically, a good biblical foundation and grounded.
Yes.
Because in today's society, they fight so many battles, even so many more battles than you and I fought probably as we grew up.
And I see that a lot with my second daughter. She goes to a large high school, and there's a lot of dark influence, especially at that, just because it's such a large high school, and you just gotta keep on them. You gotta let them learn a little bit on their own, but just be that beacon of light for them as a parent.
Yeah, and The couple weeks here ago, I done a podcast about our youth, and I did it with Luke Taylor, and we talked a little bit about the influence of parental guidance. A lot of times when kids grow up in a home where parents model what it means to be a good Christian set of parents in a good Christian home, the stats usually skyrocket that your kids are a lot of times are going to follow that same example and path.
Right. And I don't want to portray like I'm this perfect angel. You know, we're all human. The only person that has ever been perfect is Jesus. But the main key is keep your eyes on the Lord. When you fall, get back on that horse, keep riding.
Yeah. That's the whole human nature of us is we were born into sin.
Yes.
so
exactly.
Definitely we're all going to make mistakes occasionally, but that is the key, is to get up and just keep on moving forward. That's what's important. I also do attend church with Chris. He attends the church that I do, and I know that you serve in our local church here a little bit. Tell us a little bit about what you do with the church family.
So the two things that my wife and I, we serve on the baptism host. That's if anybody after service wants to get baptized, we help facilitate getting all that done. My main service in church is the youth. Every Wednesday night, unless I'm out on the road, just getting with the kids. The kids in youth, some of them come from great families, some of them not so great families, and it's important with our youth to they're our future. Mm-hmm. And I do everything I can to just be a good, positive person, because a lot of them don't get the basic positivity at home. They have a very, very hard home life, and that's kind of their escape, and I enjoy it.
Yeah. And I know with our church, which ours is a little bit bigger church, it's considered a mega church to an extent. I know that in our youth situation, we have some youth that come that their parents don't attend church, so it's really about the only churching that they're getting.
Right. As I serve just about every Wednesday, I see that the parents will just pull up, drop them off, and they attend service, and I'm okay with that, because the hope and the goal is that they'll get such a excitement and thirst for the Lord that it'll kind of help permeate that into the home. Sometimes it doesn't, but we're always hoping that's what happens. You gotta show people love in a day and age of hate and divisiveness. Show a little bit of love.
Yeah, very true. Also, in your past, and another way, I've known Chris for quite some time. One reason for that is he used to be in law enforcement here in our area, and I was a firefighter at one point in time in my life, and the
firefighters needed heroes.
Is that what it was? Yeah, it's always that ongoing joke, about we take care of each other.
Yes.
The father figure type thing. But yeah, we were actually served together for the same city that we live in, and so I've known Chris for quite some time. And you've got some military background as well. Tell us a little bit about your law enforcement and your military career.
Law enforcement, at first I thought I wanted to be a kindergarten teacher. That changed whenever I worked at a daycare.
That'll change real quick.
Oh my word, it was a lot. There was a lot going into it. I changed focuses, because I figured out that the Lord made me a servant type of person. I just have always just had a heart for serving, and he drew me into law enforcement and the idea of you just never know what's going to come at you. So I went to the police academy. This happened during 9/11. It was just kind of a crazy time in our lives as Americans. And anyway, graduated from the academy, got hired on at Neosho, worked at Neosho for 5 years, full-time. Decided that I wanted to go into business for myself, because the truth of the matter is, as my family was growing, I just couldn't afford to be a police officer anymore. So I went and did some reserving for a couple years before finally just going into business full-time.
Yeah. And as it goes, for a lot of you that aren't aware, if you've never been in a public service type family. Any law enforcement, firefighting, a lot of times the medical side with the EMTs, they're all very underpaid. I know with myself on the fire department, it was my full-time job. We worked 24 hours, was off 48, but I always had a second job. Most of us down there had a second job. And I know some of the police officers, did that some on the side as well.
And that's part of we'll get into it later, that's part of where my platform is first responders, public servants, help is on the way.
Yeah. That's good, because it definitely has been something that's been there since the beginning of time. And yes, the payrolls go up, but the inflation just keeps staying way ahead of that.
Yeah.
And definitely something that needs to be looked into for sure. Now, you said that you did leave, eventually left the law enforcement. And also, what about your military? Tell us a little bit about that before we go any further.
Military, I'm on my 24th year. December, I'll have 24 years. I'll retire next year in December. It'll give me 25 years. Oh, man. Talk about where I have learned a lot in life. Military, you see all walks of life, all religions, everything whenever you are in the military. And the past 23 going on 24 years have been a lot of leadership opportunities for me, taking care of missions, operations, taking care of soldiers, creating missions, creating just a lot of things for me to do as far as the leadership side of things, but also give me real life experience of what else is out there as far as other people. Been deployed 2003. It was a long deployment. It was a 17-month deployment, very hot, but I used to be very impatient, but whenever you stand in line at a Burger King in the middle of the desert for 4 hours, you learn a little bit of patience.
Yeah, tweaks that a little bit, doesn't it?
Exactly.
Yes. So coming out of all of that, you said too that you were a business owner.
Yes.
And I know a couple of businesses that you've owned, but right currently you do have your own business.
Yeah, I've got a construction company. Yeah. Wright Family Homes. I used to build for people, but now I do my own projects, and I'll build it and sell it to whoever wants to buy it.
Yeah. Well, and so, that pretty much shows, we're talking to Chris Wright this week. He's Republican candidate for Missouri governor for 2024. And, I wanted to go through some of this background and that kind of stuff that you've been through and your testimony to show that, the experience is there to work with the farmer, to work with the blue collar worker. You can kind of cross all of those divides, I think, to understand where people are at in life.
And that's point. What I tell people, because I'm not in politics. I'm not a politician. I'm running for office. But the key that people need to see is my background. Even though I'm the youngest candidate, unless there's been somebody announced that I don't know that's younger than me, my background and experience trumps all of my opponents. And I'm not dogging my opponents, just the fact of the matter is I have more life experience that goes on a completely wider array of experience that I can relate with most Missourians.
Yeah. So before we take a break here in just a moment, you do have a pretty awesome testimony as far as what brought you to this point of why you decided you wanted to make, because everybody knows when you jump into politics, especially as a blue-collar person or a farmer or whatever, it's a whole different world. And things change very quickly, and you figure out who your enemies are, who your people are that'll stand by your side, who won't, and all that kind of thing. So it's a big, huge decision and a big choice to make. So what in the world made you decide to do this?
2.5 years, gosh, it's been 2.5 years ago now. I'm happy. I'm living life. I got my church. I got my full-time military job, business, side stuff, everything. Comfortable, happy, sitting in church with my wife, and it just hits me. I told my wife, I was like, babe, I think I just got called to run for governor. She's like, you did? I was like, but don't worry. I'm not a politician. I don't get into politics. I'm not doing it. I don't want anything to do with it. Don't worry. And I told the Lord, sorry, you got the wrong guy. Well, when something just burns and stirs in your heart, it just will not go away no matter what you do. This was happening to me, and for a few weeks, I just kept telling the Lord, I was like, Lord, you got the wrong guy. How am I going to compete against these political behemoths when I'm just, like you said, I'm just your everyday blue-collar, hard-working guy that just wants to be left alone by the government. Mm-hmm. So it just keeps stirring, and finally, about 4 months into it, we're sitting in church at a service again, and I'd never heard the story of Joshua conquering Jericho. And whenever that story, and if anybody who's not familiar with it, I'll shorten it. It's basically God called Joshua to go conquer a city that was supposed to be unconquerable, and Joshua, who is just a regular guy, is like, Lord, I'm not qualified to do this. And the Lord says, just go be obedient and I'll take care of the rest, basically. Mm-hmm. And so Joshua's being obedient, does the march around the walls fall. And that's whenever I knew that I had to do that. Like, this was all the check boxes, all the check marks were checked, because I felt like I'm not qualified, I'm not this, I'm not this, I'm not this. And at the end of the day, go be obedient and the rest will be taken care of. And that's the attitude I have now. I'm just being obedient. And as I've gone through this journey, you see they come out of the woodwork, the good and the bad, the ugly. But at the end of the day, I'm just being obedient.
Yeah, and that's what's important. When God calls us, that's the statement's out there that He qualifies the unqualified.
Yep.
And no matter what ministry, I think you could probably talk to anybody that does any kind of a ministry, or any person that takes a huge step forward like you have, moving into this great unknown like this. We've all probably could say that we weren't really qualified, didn't feel like we were qualified to do it from the beginning, but God does.
Well, and on top of that, there's a lot of talk about faith. So you have to understand, I sold everything that was making income for my family. I quit my full-time job. I'm in this feet first, all in type of deal. And at first it was very scary. Mm-hmm. But again, you gotta keep the faith, and I'll be all right.
Yep, God will sustain you. That is for sure.
And He has.
Yes.
He has done stuff for me that I won't go into. It wows me.
Yeah, and that really builds our faith when we can go through a battle, or go through a place where we just thought we wasn't going to be able to push on through, but God brings us through to the other side. Then that definitely just strengthens our faith and helps us to keep moving forward.
Oh yeah,
and gives us the ability to do that. Well, we're sitting in with Chris Wright this week on Connecting the Gap podcast. He is one of the Missouri governor candidates for 2024 for the state of Missouri. He's running on the Republican Party, and just throw his website out there again real quick. It's Chris Wright, the number 4, mogovernor.com. So it's Chris Wright for MissouriGovernor.com. You can go check out his platforms and anything to do with Chris at that location. We're going to take a short break here for a moment, and when we come back, we're going to dig into the platform that Chris is running on for his governor race that he is running right now, and we're going to find out a little bit about where Chris stands on several different issues that are taking place in Missouri and around the United States today. So we'll be back to getting to that here in just a moment, right after this.
Hi, my name's Chris Wright, and I'm seeking the Republican nomination for Missouri Governor in 2024. I received my calling from the Lord almost 2 years ago. This allowed me to research what our leaders in Jefferson City were doing for regular Missourians. Needless to say, I was disappointed in the work ethic and business carried out in our state. My priorities are to bring a real effort to combat human trafficking, raising pay for teachers, police officers, firefighters, and EMTs. I will seek to find a way to get our Missouri Highway Patrol officers at least a 33% pay raise. I'm 100% pro-life, and I support our Second Amendment rights. As a small business owner, I will strive to do anything I can to support our small businesses. I will work to eliminate personal property tax as well as reducing tax burdens for our senior citizens. Our agricultural industry is vital to Missouri, and I will do everything in my power to support our ag communities. Thank you for your support, and I look forward to continuing my service to the wonderful citizens of Missouri.
Welcome back to Connecting the Gap podcast. I'm Daniel Moore, your host for this podcast. Again, you can visit my website, connectingthegap.net, for anything that you would like to know about our ministry here at Connecting the Gap. We thank you once again for joining us this week. And of course, if you've been listening for the first half of this podcast, you know that I've got another special guest with me this week. It's Chris Wright. He is running for Missouri governor. He's a candidate for the state of Missouri for 2024, running on the Republican Party ticket. And the first half here, we've been able to dig into his background and what makes Chris tick and where he comes from and all the intimate details, I guess you could say, of Chris and his family life and church life. And so now we're going to go ahead and move into the second half of the podcast here and talk about the platforms that Chris is running on, the changes that he would like to see here in Missouri. And as I was looking through your website there, Chris, I saw a statement that kind of stuck out to me. And there was a statement there that you made about building a better Missouri. And when we think about that statement, what is the foundation of the point you're wanting to make there to build a better Missouri?
So whenever you look at that statement, we're talking, let's go outside of the regular standard Republican way of, Second Amendment, pro-life, all those things. Let's dig a little deeper, because as I have visited with people, just life experience of what I'm learning, there's a lot of people in Missouri and all across the nation, but Missouri, because that's where I travel a lot, the things that I talk to them about and how unhappy they are, they give me specifics, and the one that is the biggest to me is it's an accountability with our state department heads. And I'm not picking on any particular state department out there. There's a lot of them, and the same problem, the same complaints, the same everything that I keep getting and hearing and learning is there's just really not a whole lot of accountability from the leaders to these department heads, and I think that needs to change. Another one that I'm a huge advocate for, just because we live here in Southwest Missouri, is utility bills. I have a lot of friends who work for Liberty. Great people. I'm just talking about the rates themselves. I'm personally on NUMAC. My electric rates are 10 cents a kilowatt hour. Right now we're in the summer surge, the peak time, whatever you want to call it. Liberty, and it's straight off their website, their rates for rural are up to 34, 38 cents a kilowatt hour on peak times. And that's just straight up raking people over the cold. There are so many Liberty customers that can't pay other necessity bills because their electric bills are so high, and it's nothing but corporate greed.
Yeah.
Just
straight up.
Some people are not going to be happy with that, but that's straight up what it is. Corporate greed, because I can go to NUMAC and get my rates, and they are so much lower. It's the same electricity.
Yeah.
This isn't rocket science.
Yeah.
And then the other one, talking to all the rural roads, we have, I think it was $3 billion for our budget for construction. Well, majority of that's going to the interstates. How about the rural people? Candidates constantly, rural this, rural that, farmers this. Well, I don't know if they're driving the same roads I'm driving, but our rural roads in a lot of places are atrocious.
Yes, they are.
I've been on I-70. I-70 does not need expanded.
Yeah. Yeah, and I'm
Get me started.
and I'm a Liberty customer. And, one thing that my wife and I made a choice to do last year, hoping that it'll pan out in the end in the way that we want it to, but we did get solar. And one of the big reasons behind that is because Liberty does keep extending their rates so often. At least if my solar will make enough power to cover my bill for the most part, I've just got that level bill for the next 25 years, hopefully.
Well, and I want to go into that. People are like, well, how are you going to go against the utility company? Well, the governor is the one who appoints the Public Service Commission. They are the ones who are allowing the rate increases. The rate increases for the for-profit utility companies have to go before the Public Service Commission.
Yeah.
And my people are going to be a bunch of no people.
Yeah, and I think it's proof. The proof's in the pudding, as they say. When you can sit here and say that what the rates are for NewMac, and NewMac is another electrical co-op here in the Southwest Missouri area.
They're a co-op, right?
Just to get everybody up to speed here with what we're talking about. The rural areas here around the Neosho area where we both live in is serviced by NewMac, where the city itself is more serviced by Liberty. And if you can look at the NewMac rates as a smaller unit, knowing that Liberty is all over the United States, they got many states in the U.S. that's covered by Liberty. I think they're in Canada. I think they're a Canadian company.
They are owned by Algonquin, which is Canadian owned.
Yeah.
And that's what I want to get into is Liberty, Algonquin, whoever will say, well, we infrastructure this and this. Well, you're a private company. If you're losing money, well, that's the cost of being in business for yourself.
Yeah.
You should not be allowed to go to the taxpayers to bail you out. It's back in 2008 when we had the automakers getting bailed. I'm so sick and tired of government and big corporations sucking the life out of its taxpayers.
Yeah. The government, unfortunately, their views are so socialistic these days that the first thing they want to do is they want to try to come in and take over everything and force us, the consumer, to rely that much more on the government. And that's how they do that, is by raising prices. The prices get so exorbitant and so high that the average person can't handle those kinds of bill payments each month. They go to these different things that the state puts out there to help pay for stuff.
Right, and we'll even go into this little off topic, but it's still part of the Better Missouri. You look at the example, the fact that there are foreign-owned countries who own Missouri land baffles me, and the fact that two of my opponents supported that. Mm-hmm. And the argument is, well, all the Republicans voted for it at the time. Well, just because everybody does it doesn't mean it's right. How on earth can you do anything that's going to benefit China? It blows me away. One of the other opponents, there's two of us that have been in the military, and we're both the ones that are opposed to. One says he is, but he's voted a different way. Anyway. Yeah. The voting talks. It's the two military guys that are opposed to this stuff because it's so blatantly obvious. You don't help China.
Yeah. And a lot of times I think that's the importance of, serving our country either in the military or serving in public service areas. You a lot of times have a tendency to appreciate our country and what we have, being able to sustain ourselves a lot more than the person that has never really involved themselves much in that. They're just more worried about trying to pad their pocket.
Make that dollar,
because it all comes back down to greed. And we need to put our country first.
Yes.
Definitely. And our states that we live in, we need to put those areas first, because that's what's going to sustain our livelihood in the future to come for our kids and our grandkids and everybody else that's coming up behind us. So as we move on here in your platform, one of the first things that you have noted on your website is the Second Amendment. Where are you at on the Second Amendment in your campaign?
So this is very clear, and I was in Colombia attending a human trafficking event, not an event, but a school, learning more about it, and I made it very clear to them. It was a liberal-minded person, asking me how many guns I owned and all this and all that. And I, sweet old lady, and I just broke it down to her very simplistic, and maybe this will help some people who are confused, but nowhere in the Second Amendment does it say what kind of gun arms we can bear, and nowhere in the Second Amendment does it limit how many. I don't know if I need to go more into that, but you have the right to bear arms, and it doesn't say what kind or how many. The only way you get that taken away is if you become a felon.
Yep.
And don't become a felon, and you don't have to worry about it.
Law-abiding citizens get all the perks.
It's not hard.
That's right. And I totally agree. I have several firearms myself, and I think what a lot of people have a tendency to forget, and you see it all the time in the media. As soon as something happens that has a firearm involved or is firearm related, they automatically want to blame the gun instead of the person. And it's been proven time and time again, I have a clean record. I choose to stay out of trouble. I choose not to take my firearms and go use them somewhere where I should not be, or doing something with them I shouldn't be doing with them. It's cut and dry, plain and simple. If you use things for what they're built for, and you don't take it beyond that range into the unlawful and the illegal, everything works great. It works like an old machine.
And I simplified this also for the lady. It's, I have the right to defend my life and my family's life. And so I told her, I was like, see that gentleman across the class? I was talking with her across the room. I was like, how many guns do you think he has? She's like, oh my gosh, I don't know. I was like, I don't know either. But the thing I was taught as a police officer in the military, my one job at the end of the day is to go home to my family.
Yep.
I have to be prepared. I'm not saying you got to have sleepless nights thinking everybody's going to kick in your door, but just be ready.
Yep, definitely.
Protect yourself.
Yeah, and that's a given right that we've had, since the beginning of our country, the Constitution, when it was put out in the Bill of Rights, and that's something that we should all be proud of as Americans. We should be proud of those things that were put in place before us, and we need to definitely uphold those and support those in the future and the times to come, understanding that, yes, good things sometimes are used for bad purposes.
Yep.
But that still does not put the blame on the inanimate object. That's a people problem.
Yes.
And we've got to go to the source of what's causing all of this. There's people with mental instabilities, and they've got demons inside of them. Telling them things all the time and trying to get them to do bad stuff, and that stuff needs to be approached. Those types of things need to be treated, and all of us law-abiding citizens shouldn't be the ones that take the brunt of
and I'm glad you mentioned that, because the mental health, there is a serious issue with all the mental health. We need more mental health professionals to help individuals who are suffering from mental health. It is a lot bigger than what I ever thought it was.
Yeah.
And it is a severe problem, and we need Missouri, I will say, has done a lot to help that, but there can be more done. So as governor, I will be pushing more for helping mental health. It's bad.
Yeah, and the average person doesn't see that unless you're in law enforcement or have something to do with law enforcement. I was a warrants deputy for 2 years at Jasper County at one point in time, so one of my main jobs there was booking in prisoners, and we handled the prisoners coming in and out of the facility there at Jasper County Detention Center, going to their court hearings and keeping all of that stuff lined out. When you're around that for just a short period of time, you really understand how many people out there are really messed up, and they're repeat offenders a lot of times. They continually do that over and over. Unless you're around that all the time, you don't understand what the problem is.
Yeah, there's a lot of mental health.
Yeah, and it's definitely something that needs to be looked into for sure. The second point here is on freedom of religion and speech, and of course, yesterday being June the 30th, a lot of you probably saw in the news that the Supreme Court made a landmark ruling on freedom of speech and freedom of religion with the case that was going on in Colorado. There was a website designer out there that refused to do a website for a same-sex couple because, and her whole battle behind the whole thing, her whole platform was she didn't have a problem doing the website for the couple. It's when they started wanting her to put stuff on the website, making statements and that kind of thing that she disagreed with, that went against her religious beliefs, that she decided she wanted to send them elsewhere. And in the process of all of that, she was sued by them for discrimination, and she lost her cases in Colorado. Colorado told her she owed them millions of dollars because of her discriminating like she was, and they in turn started to try to control what she put on her website. She would put statements of faith and different kinds of things like that on her website, and they told her she could not do that. And so this ended up escalating to the Supreme Court, and of course the Supreme Court lowered the hammer on that on the 30th of June and said that she has every right to live within her realms of her religion. She has every right to her speech that she has to say, because that's what the foundation of America is built upon. And I see that, the freedom of speech and religion thing here is a platform that you're running on. So what's your stance on all of this with the religion and the speech?
Kudos to the Supreme Court on getting this one right. As a business owner, I can relate to my feelings on this and thought is, and it's like you just said, we always have the freedom of speech and religion. Just because you don't agree with me as a business owner with my rights doesn't mean you can sue me. Well, I mean, you can sue me, but there's got to be a fine line drawn with the sue happy ignorance of this. It's to go and poise. If you wanted me to make a cake that I didn't agree with because it's got homosexual stuff on it, I just don't believe in that. And as a business owner, I shouldn't have to do that. There are plenty of other companies that will do that.
Yeah.
I don't agree with it, so I'm not going to do it. It's my business. It was my investment. It's my livelihood. If I choose not to do it, then that's one of the parts of owning a business. It kind of will lead me into, so hopefully I'm clear on that.
Yeah.
It'll kind of lead me into the whole COVID thing, and I'm not trying to play Monday morning quarterback, but the whole part where we had mass mandates and it crippled a lot of small businesses. And, COVID, yes, it was real. I believe it was way hyped up. But what I'm getting at is I just never could understand the mandate. If you're so worried about catching COVID, stay home. There are so many ways to get your groceries, get this, whatever. Don't cripple these small businesses and livelihoods because you're nervous about going out.
Yeah.
Stay home. Nobody's making you go to the restaurant. And I ended up fighting the military on this. They're like, hey, you're going to get the COVID. I'm like, go kick rocks. I'm not. I went to JAG, figured out my legal proceedings and went that way, and fortunately never had to get the shot. And if you got, hey, great, that's your choice. I just was not one that was into the whole COVID hype. I did my research, and the research wasn't matching what was being said. Yeah,
and again, the freedom comes back even into that. The United States, our forefathers before us went through many, many wars, and we've lost lots of ancestors over this freedom that we have today.
Yep.
And what's going on today really is the story really of the human life anyway, the way it is. It seems like the further we get away from the points in history where a huge change was made, the more it's forgotten. And I really see that happening today with a lot of our younger generations. They've never had to fight for anything. Everything's been handed to them on a silver platter, and they forget the sacrifices somebody made way back when to give us these freedoms that we have today, to decide if we want to take a shot or not, to decide if we want to have freedom of speech or freedom of religion, to have the right to agree to disagree.
Yep.
There's a lot of people that lost their lives to give us that ability, and it does it's showing really well in today's society, where a lot of these younger kids that are growing up now, they don't have any clue. And especially if the schools, a lot of it falls back on our education system too, because a lot of our education system now, even up into the college age, are trying to take out U.S. history and a lot of these classes, on the Emancipation Proclamation, the Constitution, a lot of these classes that used to focus on what our country believes in and why we have the laws we have and the fundamentals that we have.
Why we have what we have in place.
They're taking these classes out, and they can't even take classes to even learn about that anymore, so they're clueless.
Well, whenever state funding gets taken away from colleges, maybe they'll pull their head out of the clouds, and
the dollar talks.
Yes. I've always said you want to affect people, affect the pocketbook.
Yep, that's right.
And
there's definitely some things there that are going to have to change. There's no doubt about that at all.
Yes, absolutely.
As we get into the next one here, it's another big battle that's been waged here in this last year in the Supreme Court is with the pro-life situation. Where do you stand at with the pro-life platform?
Very simple. I am 100% pro-life. The only situation, and it's even hard, I'm not playing God, not trying to, but the medical emergency situation where if giving birth would kill the mother, that would be the only, in my mind, okay reason. I don't even like saying that because it's just, but here's the reality. The world's not perfect. There's a lot of evil in this world, a lot of bad. The world sucks.
Yeah.
That's just the bottom line. And my argument is with abortion is you don't, what about the girl that got raped? I feel awful for that. They are going through a lot of trauma, but I had a guy say, you don't fix a wrong with another wrong.
Right.
And I'm not the world's just it's not a perfect place.
It just stinks sometimes.
Very
Well, I know
it's hard.
I was a medic for 6 years when I was on the fire department, and looking at it from a medical standpoint, hospitals are in place, the medical community is in place to help make us well again. Okay, so whenever people go to the hospital because they have an illness or they have a severe emergency that's happened to them, some trauma, whatever it may be, the ultimate focus of that medical facility at that point in time is to fix the issue. And so, coming back, I understand completely, because my thought process on the whole platform is basically it's in line with yours. I totally agree with where you stand on that, and it is a tricky thing when you start talking about the female that's in the hospital having an issue. Do you take the baby, not take the baby? Well, you have to look at that as the medical community is there to help fix the problem that's at hand, and unfortunately sometimes if you're going to protect the mother and help the mother get better and help her to get well. And if it means the baby, something has to be done with that situation, it's just a call that has to be made. And a lot of times that's going to fall back on the parents too. I mean, the parents can have some say in that to an extent of which route they want to go with that as well. But that's one of those things, where there's just not a right or wrong answer.
It's not a
tough.
perfect situation. It's one of those hard answers hard problems you got to deal with in life. Thank God I haven't been in that situation.
Yeah.
And I know there's going to be some people out there that just think I'm full of hater. That's just not the case.
Yeah. Well, if there's any way that the baby can be healthy and born, that baby needs to have its right to life.
Yes.
Because it is a person in the womb.
Right to life.
Regardless, we've got to remember that, and this is something that I've had to navigate through is, over the last couple of weeks here, some of the podcasts that I've had with the transgenderism and the gay agenda and stuff that's going on, a lot of times we want to attack the people. And we got to remember that it's not the people that we are attacking. We are fighting a war that's in the supernatural. and we have to attack Satan. That's where all of this is stemming from. And so when you have the rapes and you have the sodomies and just, everything that goes on that's totally disgusting in this world today, that is all demonic. That's from the demonic realm. That's Satan manipulating and getting his fingers in where they shouldn't be. And yes, it's a horrible thing when that happens.
And I mean, here's a way to even think about it, going back to all those things that are bad. I mean, I'm not saying go, if you're you talk to a prisoner or somebody who has been in prison and they've murdered, bank robbed, stole car, whatever. There's one thing that you just don't, there's just something unforgivable, and that's whenever you have offenses against the children.
Yeah.
It's like, and these hardened criminals even hate that stuff.
Oh yeah, they've murdered inside the prison systems for stuff like that. When I worked at Jasper County Detention Center, and it's like this, pretty much at any detention center, correctional facility, but they separate those child absconders from the rest of the population. You can't put them together. Nope. Yeah, these other guys, they might have murdered somebody or murdered several people, but they were adults, and if they find somebody's done something to a kid, they're not beyond taking them out.
Exactly.
And so, there's definitely some truth behind all of that. The next subject here is jobs in the economy. Where are you headed at on that platform for Missouri?
So as far as it's hard to even know what's real as far as job reports, because I keep hearing about how, jobs are at, employment's an all-time high, or we're to pre-COVID low, all this stuff. But anytime I go down the road, now hiring, can't get anybody work, can't get anybody come in, all this stuff, and to me, that's the reality, is because I'm seeing it in real life, not what the media, because it's hard for me to trust the media, and I see all these now hiring and stuff like that, and I think it goes back to where the government is just giving money, our taxpayer money. I'll use this for an example. You got EBT. I understand the process of it as far as it's to help people, so forth and so on, to have food and whatever. But when I go into a convenience store and I see somebody paying for 3 monsters with an EBT, that blows me away. The state needs to reform. Honestly, if I was to do it my way, I would turn everything into how WIC is ran. I used WIC whenever I was a young father and kids. You get to pick a few kinds of milk, bread, grains. Like, you don't get to pick what flavor of Monster and Swisher Sweet you want.
Yeah.
We've got to change that as far as getting rid of the handout mentality to, hey, let's get these people back to work and contribute to society, because right now it's a huge burden on the taxpayer, and I'm not okay with that.
Yeah, and so often now we go to restaurants. A good example, my wife and I left church Wednesday night and ran through a McDonald's that's there close to our church campus just to grab a McFlurry. And we sat there in that line for almost over 30 minutes. And we finally got up to the window, they were full of apologies. We're just short-staffed tonight, just don't have enough people working tonight, And I told my wife, I was like, we're pretty patient for the most part about stuff like that usually anymore. But it's just one of those things you think about. It's like you were saying, there's so many people on the side of the streets panhandling, holding signs and everything else, and you can't even get enough help at a McDonald's to get your McFlurry in a reasonable amount of time. It just makes no sense. And most of these people holding these signs, they've got 2 legs, 2 arms, they're walking around like nothing's an issue. And I'm like you, I don't understand it. I really don't.
Some of them, there are issues with some of them, but most of them, they just don't want to work. And it's laziness.
Yeah. And there's a guy that was standing outside town here for several months at one point here a couple years ago, and he stood at the same intersection coming off the interstate and collecting money. He was out there early in the morning till 4 or 5 o'clock in the afternoon, and somebody stopped one day and told him to, being a little smart aleck, but told him, go get yourself a job. Well, the guy snipped back at him. He said, "Why would I want to do that? I make more money standing here than I would if I went and got an 8 to 5 job." Mm-hmm. And he just waved the guy off, and the guy went and posted that, on social media about that. And I think if we really went around and talked to a lot of these people standing on street corners, that'd probably be about the same story.
Oh, I guarantee it.
And until I know a lot of our locals that pulls on their heartstrings,
and that's the hard part.
They see them standing out there.
There's so many good people that they want to help a person out, and
they take advantage of it.
Take advantage of
standing on the street corner. Yep,
100%.
Of course, another big issue that's going on today is racialism and. Of course, the transgenderism, the affirmation of transgenderism of children with drag queen story hours, and actually going ahead and making it legal to do surgeries on children now. 13, 14, 15-year-olds are able to go ahead and start their hormone treatments and start to have breast tissue removed and different things of that nature. There's no states at this point, I don't think, that's not being hit by this issue. And states are now having to start to scramble, trying to put policies into place and that kind of thing to try to help stop this and regulate it. What's something that you think you'll be able to do or will continue?
You got to be proactive in these things. Unfortunately, we have a lot of leaders who are reactive, but there are some good leaders in the state that are being proactive. There's such a fight from the other side to let mutilation of children happen and all these other horrific things to our kids, and somehow they think it's okay, and it's not. And it starts at home. I mean, you got to have a good parent with a right state of mind to fight back against it. I mean, at the end of the day, it all starts with the parents. Mm-hmm. But as we see, there's a lot of parents making just horrific, idiotic choices and allowing their kids to go through this. It needs to be more of an emphasis on the mental health issue that they're suffering. We should just never allow any child under the age of 18 to get any type of gender, all that nonsense. It's just, it doesn't, there's no place in it. Now, I do understand once you turn 18 and you're adult, you have that right to do whatever you want. But as a child, it should never be going on. And there should be full prosecution on anybody who does.
Yeah, I totally agree. It's a huge issue for sure that's going on in our states right now. And I think the one thing that I really feel with the transgenderism and that kind of thing, I think that I don't know if we need more education, if there's some way that maybe we need to figure out some way to get information out to parents so that they understand exactly what this epidemic is doing to our kids. Right now, it's such a new thing that seems to have just taken us by storm. It's almost kind of hard to know to an extent how to handle it from the parents' standpoint.
You gotta, this one's an almost impossible thing. It's social media. Yeah. The social media, the garbage on social media that these kids, and it becomes popular, like eating Tide Pods and licking
paint chips or
whatever. Yeah. The stupidity, the nonsense that is on social media, and then these kids get it in their head that, oh well, I need to be popular or relevant with my peers, and it's peer pressure and bad information on social media.
Yeah. As we move on here, law and order. This is a big one because, we've got a lot of states on the East Coast that pretty much lets the bad guys run the cities and that kind of thing. Of course, with you being in law enforcement and military background, I know exactly where this will go, but I just wanted to let you talk a minute about this and maybe what you're going to do for law enforcement.
100% law and order. We have laws for a reason. Right now, at this point, with laws, how do I say this? We have so many laws, but I am noticing a very large uptick in these laws not being enforced, and we need to get back into more enforcement of the laws that we already have on the books. More people need to be held accountable. I don't know the ends. I know there's a lot of judges and prosecuting attorneys, which are elected positions, that are letting bad guys go or slap on the hands. I mean, I'm just a few miles south of Joplin, and there's example after example of repeat offenders that are just doing more and more and more aggressive crimes because they know that they'll just get a slap on the hand. So there needs to be more enforcement and more holding these people that are committing these crimes in jails and having real bond amounts. Mm-hmm. So I don't know what's going to be within my powers as far as being able to, if it gets to the point where reappoint some people or whatever the case may be. But at the end of the day, as governor, it's the top executive position. At the end of the day, that falls on me, the safety mm-hmm. of overall Missouri. And if we have people in leadership positions, state and county levels, that aren't doing that, hey, it's time to find some people that will. Time
to clean some house.
Yeah. And the problem you get is these guys that are in politics, they're all up in they all end up being buddy. Well, I'm not doing this to be buddies with people. I'm here to get work done. Mm-hmm. There's a big job that needs to be done. And it's just everybody's high-fiving, having dinners at the taxpayer expense. And
yeah,
I'm done with that.
Yeah. And so far, with us being in mid-America, and we're pretty much right in the center of the United States where we're located, in a lot of ways, fortunately, we're still kind of shielded from a lot of this nonsense that's going on the East and West Coast at this point. But as I've discussed with people here in the past and here previously, it's just like COVID. Whenever it started, it was in another country, and I remember vividly telling my wife, I hope it stays over there,
Right.
Hope it doesn't come over here. Well, then next thing we know, there's 2 or 3 cases in New York, there's 2 or 3 cases in California. They start popping up, and I'm like, well, I'm so glad I live in Missouri, because it's way over there now. Well, before we knew it, we were saturated with it. It's one of those things that if it's not taken care of up front, if it's able to be taken care of, it's going to saturate everywhere.
Yep.
And so you definitely have to, like you said earlier, be proactive with that.
Got to be proactive.
Yeah. So one final thing here that I had on the list to talk to you about is just the overall cost of living and taxes that we have here in Missouri. Where are you at on that subject?
So here's what I have a problem with. You look at our budget this year, roughly $52 billion. What was the budget 5 years ago? About half of that. So in 5 years, we've needed to double our budget, and that's a $1 billion budget. Do you feel like you've gotten that much more support or better way of life? No, your taxes keep going up.
Yeah.
There literally needs to be a team, and this is what I am proposing, a team to go through the budget line by line and get rid of the ridiculous nonsense stuff. So, and I don't know if this is really in there. I'm just giving a scenario. If you see a $20 million grant to the University of Missouri for hummingbird research, no, that's not the taxpayer's problem. That's why schools get tuition. I could spend $40 grand of state taxpayer money for people that's all they do for 2 weeks. 20 people go through that and document. I guarantee you we could cut 20, 25 billion, if not more, out of that budget. Probably close to 40. We're not getting lower taxes, a significant lower tax, getting rid of things like personal property tax or getting those lowered until we get the budget under control. And right now, our state thinks it's a personal piggy bank. And again, that's not right.
Yeah, just riding on the taxpayers' back for every little social agenda or whatever that they want to throw out there. And
so at the end of the day, something that's different about me than even my opponents, I am very proactive. I live a life of reality with everyday people. I'm not in the protection of Jeff City. I know what is going on, what's struggling, and I work. I am a worker. I'm not let's go have dinner with this person, because I'm no. I'm here to work. There's problems that need to be solved. There needs to be accountability with other leadership, and I'm going to do everything within my power to do that.
Yep. Well, we appreciate that. We've been here with Chris Wright this week. He is a Republican candidate for Missouri governor for 2024. And as we close here today, Chris, I know that you have an opportunity on your website for people that can help out by volunteering for your campaign or doing different things to help support you guys. What exactly are areas that you need some help in as far as volunteering and that kind of thing goes?
I would say right now the biggest need is just getting the word out there, sharing on social media. Social media is pretty much free. Today's day and age, it takes money to run a campaign. It does. My opponents, they're going to have millions of dollars, but most of that's going to be spent on hate campaign. I'm not about that, but it takes gas money. It takes, hotel stays. It takes signs, stuff like that. So any $10 donation, $5 donation, $20 donation, anything like that is always helpful. I'm not looking for big corporate sponsors. I don't want people thinking that I'm bought and paid for by somebody, because I'm not. That's just the reality of it. But the reality also is it takes money. So any little bit helps. Going on the website, we've got a place there. If you want to get a hold of me in person, I can direct you there. If you want to meet me in person, write a check, whatever the case may be, I'll take any of those. But then volunteers, just anybody who may be retired, semi-retired, something like that wants to just travel with me and help me pass out cards or material as I travel the state. I'm up for that too.
Yeah. Okay.
Literally anything.
Okay. And as far as donations go, like Chris said, you can go to their website. It's Chris Wright for Missouri Governor. And the 4 is the number 4 and then MO for Missouri. So Chris Wright for MissouriGovernor.com. And there's a place there that you can actually donate online. And he also takes the good old-fashioned check. If you'd like to write a check to him, you can mail those in as well. The address for that is Chris Wright for Missouri Governor at P.O. Box 4675, Joplin, Missouri 64803. All of that information is on their website, so check all of that out. If people want you to come speak or talk or need to get a hold of your campaign, what route do they go to have that happen?
The best one is to go email my campaign. It's just easier to keep track of. But a lot of people just call me, say, hey, can you come to an event? I'll look at my calendar and I'll put it in on the spot type of deal. I'm a very personable people type of, I don't have a big crew working for me to where I'm insulated from everybody. Just get a hold of me. It's easy.
Okay. As far as social media links go, you are online in several different places. Chris has a LinkedIn profile on the internet, and that is at Wright for Missouri, with the 4 being the number 4, Wright for Missouri. You can reach him on Twitter at Wright for Missouri, the same handle there. And then on Facebook, he is at facebook.com/Chris Wright for Missouri Governor, which is just like the website, how it's all spelled out. So So there's multiple ways there, as Chris said, that you can contact them at their campaign. Ask any questions you may have. He'll field anything and try to answer to the best of his ability any concerns or any information that you would like to know about his campaign as he goes through this next year running for Missouri governor for 2024. So again, I just refer you back to his website to check all of that out, or his social media links. And Chris, I do want to thank you for taking the time out of your schedule to sit in here with us today and just explain what this next year holds for you and your family.
I appreciate it. It's a big undertaking, but I'm excited. I've just always stuck up for the little guy, and I feel like when it comes to government, us regular people, taxpayers, are the little guy, and I'm here to stick up.
Yep. Well, that's good to know. And of course, Chris and Nicole will take all your prayers. Please keep them in prayer, put a prayer covering over them as they're going to be doing. He's already been traveling a lot, but they're going to have a lot more traveling to go here over this next few months here as this campaign continues to roll out and to open up as he tries to get to know everyone that's an occupant of Missouri. And so please keep them in their prayers as they continue forward in this endeavor. So again, you can visit Chris Wright for MissouriGovernor.com and find out more about Chris Wright and his campaign as he runs for Missouri Governor for the Republican Party in 2024. Well, that's going to wrap it up for this week. Thank you guys for sitting out with us here and getting to know Chris a little bit and his family and what his campaign's all about. As far as Connecting the Gap goes, you can check out my website, connectingthegap.net. There you'll find all of the platforms that my podcast is released on. You can pretty much get this podcast anywhere where you can listen to your podcasting app. And you can also visit my website, connectingthegap.net. There's also a form there that you can reach out and contact us. There's also an email, daniel@connectingthegap.net. You can also email that address and get a hold of me there if you have any questions or comments or whatever it may be. Of course, please share this on social media as much as possible. If you believe in the platform that Chris is putting out there and you think that he would be the best candidate for the job for governor, then please just share the tar out of this podcast and get this everywhere so that people, especially throughout the state of Missouri, can get to know Chris and understand what his intentions are and what his goals are as he goes through this campaign and hopefully wins the nomination for the governor of Missouri here in 2024. Well, I'm out of here till next week. We'll have a brand new podcast coming your way. Thank you guys for joining me. Don't forget as we leave today that God's word never fails us. God's word has stood the test of time, and through Jesus' death on the cross, he has connected the gap. You've been listening to Connecting the Gap podcast. I'm Daniel Moore, the host for this podcast, and I personally thank you for listening each week. In this world, there are many disconnects that cause chaos in our lives. This podcast is birthed from the desire to share hope and restoration of the power of the gospel by being transparent and open in our biblical walk with God. Each week, we take a few moments as we navigate God's Word and peer into other people's testimonies and encourage each other to connect the gap. We upload a new audio podcast every Thursday and a video version of it on YouTube and Rumble. We are also on the Christian podcasting app Edify. You can subscribe to our podcast on many of the available podcasting platforms such as Apple Podcast, Deezer, Spotify, Google Podcast, Amazon Music, iHeartRadio, TuneIn Radio, and many more. We are also available on your Alexa-enabled devices. If you would like to give us feedback or would like to contact our ministry for any reason, including prayer, visit our contact page at www.connectingthegap.net and send us a message. We hope you are blessed by this ministry. This is a production of Connecting the Gap Ministries.